All right, I'm back. Sit in my truck. It's pissing rain outside. Never made it to the mountains today. Never made it to the river today. Getting caught up. And, what is this? Day 3 in YouTube jail. So I'm going to throw up when you do hear this on the YouTube channel. I'll throw up some nature shots on there for you to watch. In the meantime, anybody who figured out the podcast, the Facts by HowToHunt.com podcast, and then you will be listening to it right away. Now, what have I got here? I got a pile of emails. I just did a whole bunch, and the card got corrupted. And there's content on there that I needed to help some game wardens with the poaching case, and I think I lost it. Although I do have copies of that, but it's unfortunate timing. But anyway, let me get on with some shares. Hopefully this card keeps its shit together. Hi, Steve. Stumbled on your channel and found it very interesting. I can share a story with you and your YouTube watchers, and just maybe someone come across something in the bush like me and my friends did. But first, I'll introduce myself and my fellow colleagues who are also part of this story. My name is Stan, now at 62, mechanical engineer, the youngest of a group of 4. Ken, veterinarian, the oldest by a couple of years. In the middle is Mike, a civil engineer, and finally John, a hunting guide. And he ran a fishing charter business in Northern Ontario, Lake of the Woods. That sounds very familiar, Lake of the Woods. I think when it comes to this topic, it sounds familiar is what I'm meaning. We grew up together in a small community in Northern Ontario, sharing the same passions, and that being most anything outdoors. It was nothing for us to go hiking into the bush, camp out for days on end, even in the winter, hunting and fishing every spare moment. But there's one passion that stood above the rest: bow hunting. We all shoot instinctive with bear bow. I used to do that for years myself. That's how I started. Our bows are handmade by us, and that's cool, but was with the guidance of a professional bow builder who was a dear friend and mentor. Unfortunately, only the memory of him remains, but it's firmly embedded into our souls. We as a group mastered stalk and shoot with the bow. We all have taken many whitetail, moose, bear, including upland birds. So, you as a hunter know just how much time is involved in scouting, learning, and understanding what you're hunting in order to stalk and shoot. Day in and day out in their environment all year round, you become one of them. So in telling all of you this, animal behavior is something we firmly understand. Well, we thought until we found this. It was early fall, 83, and we just finished filling our deer tags for the season. Also, with college and university behind us, we figured we owed ourselves a big once-in-a-lifetime adventure, something way off-grid. So we started attending sportsman shows and outdoor shows, going from booth to booth. Then finally, we met a gentleman who flies parties into remote cabins in the Yukon. We explained our intentions and what we were hoping to find. He said he knew of a cabin that is very remote and a little rustic. Totally up our alley. That's exactly what we were looking for. He said it was about 250-mile-plus flight into the interior mountains out of Whitehorse. The slot they had available was the first week they usually opened up this cabin for the season. So, third week of May, 84, it was booked. We were so excited and just couldn't stop talking about it. Finally, the day came. We flew into Whitehorse and spent the night. The next day, bright and early, he shuttled us to the pontoon plane, and by 9:30 a.m., we were in the air heading to camp. As we flew over the mountains and lakes below, you could see ice patches on some of the sheltered lakes. There was still lots of snow on the mountaintops that continued almost to the base. Then we reached the lake at camp. The lake was long and narrow, a finger lake, and it was wide open. He flew a circle around the lake to show us the river mouths before landing. The cabin was pretty much located dead center of the lake on the west side, smothered in trees. We landed on the east side of the lake, closer to the mountains. I believe it was a wind thing. We unloaded everything onto the dock, shook hands, and pushed the plane away and watched as he departed. On shore by the dock was 2 12-foot aluminum boats. Up from the dock, nestled in the trees, sat the cabin, and rustic was right. All plywood with no windows. Inside was 6 bunk beds, mattresses that I wouldn't let my dog sleep on. But as long as the wood stove works and the roof didn't leak, we were good. But one unusual thing that made us wonder at the time was why all the inside walls from top to bottom peened or hammered, like a hammered spoon fishing lure. We found out later from the pilot, he told us that last season a group got held inside the cabin by a bear, and the marks on the walls were from them banging pots and pans trying to scare the bear away. Apparently, they spent 2 days trapped inside, day and night, banging pots and pans. The bear finally took off when the plane landed and picked them up. By the number of marks on the walls, that bear must have been very aggressive. All right, I'm going to touch on that for a minute. There isn't a bear alive that's going to hang out around a cabin and torment it for 2 days and 2 nights straight. It's not going to happen. They need to eat. And especially if it was a fishing tour, then, I mean, if there's no salmon laying on the ground, laying around, they are foraging, finding carcasses if they can, and they're grazing. That means their tummies are burning it up. There's no bear alive that's going to hang out by a cabin without something to eat. It's not going to happen. Anyway, it'd be interesting to talk to those fellas, the group. I wonder if they're even actually watching this channel. You never know. And if they are, maybe they can share their story with us. Getting back to it. Sorry for that. It took us just an hour before we had everything somewhat put away. The motors put on boats and gassed up, tied at the dock and loaded with fishing gear. We were certainly itching to get on the water. But first, we gathered on the dock, cracked a beer, and took turns glassing the lake and edges, commenting. The fishing was slow at first until we figured just what the lakers were hitting on. Then things picked up. Practically seeing every fish caught as the cold water had the fish staging in the shallows. At the mouth of the river in fast water, we enjoyed Arctic grayling using fly rods, record-sized grayling at that. After a few days of pounding the waters, we decided to take a break. So on the third day, leaving the fishing gear in the cabin and taking only our binoculars, we struck out in the boats, hoping to find access or a trail that would get us onto the mountains. All of us were experienced hikers and fit to boot, but we actually had very little exposure to hiking in the mountains. So this is very exciting as well. After about half an hour or so of boating, we glassed onto a mountain that looked to have a ledge or possibly a trail that wrapped up the side of the mountain and worked its way into the tree line, disappearing. Not far at shore looked to be a good spot to pull up the boats as well. After staging the boats, we started in the direction of the trail. Finally, after a bit of meandering through the scrub brush, we found that trail we glassed and started to work our way upwards to where the trail disappeared in the scrub brush, and found signs of deer, moose, and some wolf tracks. As we furthered our way up the mountain, the tracks and all the signs just seemed to stop. The trail we were on was clear and accessible, while all the animals decided to just leave the trail and go into the thick as if they were avoiding going up this trail. We found that sort of odd. As we continued upward, the snow, old snow, was now topping our boots at about 8 inches. The snow was hard, nothing really fresh to speak of. And about an hour in, we came to a difficult spot in the trail that was narrow and left no room for error. Practically clinging to the side of the mountain for about 15 yards, the trail began to widen and headed sharply upward. We stopped at a clearing, and from here we were able to glass down onto the lake and surrounding area. Just a vast and harsh environment. Glassing up the trail ahead of us, it looked to be about another 500 to 600 yards until the trail seems to go into the bush. It's really starting to rain out there, you guys. You can probably hear it hitting the roof of the truck. Once we got to this spot, we stopped and started glassing into the woods to see where this trail is heading. Through the trees, you could see a light, thinking the trail ends up on the other side of the mountain, and this may offer up some great glassing opportunities. But still no sign of anything up here, not one track. We entered the bush, and after a couple of 100 yards or so, each taking turns glassing, Mike suddenly stops and says, "I see something in a tree 5 to 6 feet off the ground, about 100 yards out, at our 11 o'clock. As I glassed, it appeared to be a carcass in the crotch of a tree. We all agreed, and just maybe we're walking up onto a kill. Keeping our eyes peeled and ears open, we slowly made our way closer. We could now tell that it was a deer, and it has been there for a while. Now at the tree, we noticed more carcasses around the tree buried under the snow. The deer's head was placed in the crotch of the tree with its snout facing upward. Then a 4 to 5 inch limb was placed under the jaw tight to the throat. This was locking the deer's head firmly into the crotch. We brushed away the old snow and found that the front legs were missing, and as well as the hind quarters. Ken, the veterinarian, looking over the carcass in surprise, says, "There's no knife, teeth, or claw marks." He points out where the front legs and hindquarters have been ripped off the body. You could see the tear marks as the hide and meat were pulled away from the ribcage. Now, Ken is the oldest and smartest of the group, hands down. So when Ken looks confused, removes his hat and scratches his head and says, "What the F?" Obviously something is not right and clearly out of context. Something very abnormal. John, a hunting guide, says that he has never seen anything like this before. He said he has seen deer and pulled apart by horses and ATVs by poachers, but this is not really the same at all. And if done by an animal, clearly not by one he knew of. Also, why did no other animal try eating the remains? The internals, still the cavities. Even squirrels will chew away at the bones over time, but not here. John also thinks that whatever did this must have a unique or particular scent that everything just simply avoids. The probable root cause of why we have never seen any sign or tracks on our way up here. Around the tree and surrounding area, also no visible tracks. We're all thinking this all took place before the snow, so whatever tracks there might be, they're buried under 12 inches of old snow. Trying to clear away this hard and frozen snow to search for tracks would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Pointless. Ken, now focusing on finding a cause of death, we remove the deer carcass from the crotch of the tree. As Ken examines the deer, he notices on the deer's back is broken, smashed vertebrae and upper ribs. A hit mark by something blunt and heavy. The back was broken, the spine would have been severed. Ken figures this deer was crippled by blunt force trauma, but by what? Ken asks us to expose the rest of the carcasses. We uncover 7 deer carcasses from the snow, not including the one in the tree. Young. All these carcasses are yearlings and about 60 to 80 pounds when alive. But one thing for sure, they suffered the same fate. Blunt trauma to the back, resulting in several spine crippling, blunt trauma to the back, resulting in a severed spine, crippling the animal. Rip marks around the ears also reveals that each animal was placed into the tree crotch and dismembered, like the deer. This is the point where we all are looking very confused. Mike says, "This is a killing field." We decided that if we were still going to go to the other side of this mountain, we best be going. Maybe something might shed some light onto this finding. We glassed to find the best path forward and made our way towards the daylight in the bush. As we left the tree line, it was spectacular. We glassed down into the valley and could see a river below. This is a very rugged country to say the least, and there is no way of accessing anything from this side. Mostly straight and down, so no further ahead in what we found and uncovered. We headed back to the boats, then straight to the cabin, not really saying much, silenced by confusion on what we found. We spent the rest of the time fishing, sitting out on the dock, having a few beers, and enjoying everything in this unbelievable, breathtaking area. We briefly talked about what we had found, but we shunned it off in awkward chuckles and shit-eating grins. John, jokingly, after returning from an outside washroom break, said, "I just seen a Yeti carrying a huge rock. I think he may be deer hunting," as he laughs. Funny, yes, but I'm sure we are all thinking just how far from the truth may this joke really be. Sorry for the long story, Steve. Stan, no apologies, man, needed. That was a very valuable share for many people, I'll guarantee you. What was it? Just for the fact that you emailed me, you guys already know what it was. Without a doubt. Already know. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be possibly looking up that topic. And I'm quite certain you got to do a little bit of digging to find this channel, because it's not labeled as a Sasquatch or Bigfoot channel on YouTube. It's not shared by me anywhere. Anyway, moving along. Be interesting to know where you guys were. I myself have flown into a place called Trout Lake, which is just over the border of the Northwest Territories, small Indian community, native community, and I went fishing there with a bush pilot in the springtime. I don't know if that might be close or not, because we had to go across from northern BC, across the corner of the Yukon, then we landed in that lake. Then my travels in the Yukon have been from Mayo. Mayo was halfway up the Yukon to Float Plane Camp in the native community of Mayo, and we flew out of there. And when you speak of the ruggedness, especially when you're talking a couple hundred miles of bush plane flying, usually in BC, you can basically hike out you could basically hike out to some sort of road in BC via bush plane flight. It might take you a few weeks, but you can do it. But I recall when I flew, we flew east towards the Hess Valley. Northwest Territories border was across that valley from us, and I remember watching the ground, as I usually do in bush plane flights, wondering, making sure if maybe I could hike out the way we came if something goofy happened or not, and trying to semi-take mental note of the terrain. You know, as you somewhat, there's that little bug in the back of your head that always says, what if we crash now? What if we crash there? What would you do? Where would you go? Where would you hike? And I came to the quick realization that we weren't going to be hiking out from where we flew to in the Yukon. There's just no way. There's no way we were hiking over those mountains. But anyway, again, too, if the people that were flown into that fish camp before you the year before, it'd be interesting to hear their story, because I would be willing to bet heavy it wasn't a bear. They kept them in a cabin for 2 days straight. I've never, ever heard of something like that, ever, from a bear. But anyway, keep us informed if you come across any knowledge in the future, all right, that you feel that we need to hear. Because we're here, and that's what we're here for. Oh, sorry, and one other thing. I have had a handful of people email me in various places in the bush that sounded exactly what you described. Not necessarily a spot where deer had their heads lodged in the crotch of the tree, but places where there was all kinds of game carcasses piled up, where it looked like they'd been murdered and dismembered and dumped, and way away from any road. Now, what else? We got another one here. What else did I read? I read all these already. That's kind of sucked. This is red. My question is, this is titled Questions. My question is, can this really be happening? Groups of the species. Also, it involves both Canadian and U.S. governments working together on this, known to the governments that troops of some sort of the hugest and malicious beings that kidnap men, women, and children for the purpose to kill or eat or rape, which produces hybrids. These troops are all bad and dominant males. You always allude to other things going on and are never specific. Is this one of the stories you know but won't share your knowledge yet? Please, please help me. I truly am frightened for my family, and the public should and must be made aware of this situation. Thank you in advance for your time in this matter, and please use my first name only if you want to share any of this. Sincerely. All right, I don't need to share your name. I'll say you are from Delaware. One thing I would say to you is, you want information. You want to know what you should or should be scared of, how common it is for people to possibly be attacked by the beings that are talked about predominantly on this channel. Listen to the videos here, all right? You listen to the people. You listen to the people. Listen to as many of these people as you can and come up to your own conclusions. Do I know of troops of beings going around killing and raping human beings? No, I do not specifically know of that. I've heard of rumors. I've heard of stories shared. I've never spoke to anyone directly. No one has directly told me of a troop of beings that are actively killing and raping human beings. I share probably 99.99% of what I get received to me, I share with you guys word for word. But what I don't share is what people have shared with me and asked me not to share publicly. But I assure you, why would you mention that? Some people say, why do you even mention that? I don't know why I mention that. I guess I mention that to let you guys know that there's more, what would I call them? Eye-raising stories, experiences, and video clips that I've seen that would make everybody go, holy shit. And hopefully I'll get the green light to share that eventually. But a lot of these people still have careers in military, careers in government, law enforcement, and they just cannot come forward. If they did, the people who would know where it came from. So we got to wait on that. But anyways, Dave Plattis might be somebody to contact if you have true concerns. Dave knows a lot more about me than everything. I can tell you that flat out. He just does. He probably deny he does, but he does. He's very experienced in many, many different topics. Go with your gut instincts. Go with your gut. When you feel something's wrong, when you're about to go somewhere and do something, listen to your instincts and do not waver from your instincts no matter what anybody says to you, okay? And that'll keep you safe. Just keep listening to the people. Listen to the people. Listen to the people here. From what I understand, this channel now has the largest audience in the world when it comes to this knowledge sharing, and possibly the most knowledge available in the world today is on these topics is here through the people. Who not to ask, who not to listen to, that's up. I'll never tell anybody what to do or what not to do, but I can advise you what I give you an opinion. One thing I have learned is when it comes to this topic, the people to not possibly listen to are people that need you to listen to them. That's who you should probably kick to the curb if you want true, honest knowledge. People that really need to be in front of as many cameras as they can. That's probably not who you really need to listen to when it comes to knowledge on what's going on for true out in the forest, on average, for obvious reasons. You need to listen to the people. You need to listen to the people. You don't need to listen to somebody who needs you to listen to and repeat their point of view on anything. That's the wrong thing to do. Anyway, I hope I didn't babble too much, but listen, if that helped, I hope it did. If it didn't, and I can help any more, email me again and ask me some more questions, all right? I'm not going to leave you. You're not alone. I'm not going to leave you alone. But email me again if that's not enough for you, and I'll see how I can answer it better for you, all right? To make you feel better about something. You're not alone. Now, what else do I got here? Here's another one. Mark this as red. Hold on a minute. Sorry. Sharing my last encounter. Happy New Year, Steve. I sent my first real encounter with Sasquatch, Mogollon monster, pronounced Muggione. All right? Before this incident, however, I am not the gentleman that sent in the story about his encounter with other Boy Scouts off the Highline Trail in Arizona. Go north about 70 miles or so from their incident and up 2,800 feet in elevation, deep in the dark, uninhabited woods, right after bear hunting season in that area. Now I'm finally doing my thing, solo camping for a couple of weeks. The first few nights passed without incident, except for a couple of quad excursions that passed my campsite. I was off about 100 yards or so from the rocky, barely traveled road in the middle of nowhere. I'd chosen a really isolated site to be alone. Through the years, myself and some close friends have had encounters that one would think should keep me from going anywhere near this entire area. Now it had been over a decade since I had gone back. This trip was different in several personal aspects that I have no point in getting into, to suffice it to say. This particular area was where I felt inspired to go, and I'll be damned if anything was keeping me from going there. The elk had been bugling all around me every night. Let's just say it was normal for that area. It was the first full moon night and really was active with sounds that entire night and that first night. Normal really. The second night, it started. First, the hair on the back of what comes to attention in full warning that something isn't right. It was like someone had flipped a switch off because it was dead quiet. Not even the sound of wind passing through the oak and pine trees. I retired to my tent and climbed in my sleeping bag and flipped on a light to read. Nothing changed, and after a while I fell asleep. Now remember, this is the second night of a full moon, so it was lighter outside through the bush than normal. Somewhere early morning, I heard this loud echoing that I still can't explain. After about what felt like an hour passed and the echoes gave way to distinct, frickin' loud yells I couldn't decipher. I listened to you and Dave pretty much on a daily basis, so I had a good idea what they were. There were more than one distinct sound coming from the different areas around my site. The next thing surprised me, and I guess them, because I became madder than hell, and I started reading them the riot act. I mean, I was flat mad. Now, it'd been more than a decade since I'd finally gotten back in the woods, and here they are trying to mess it up. I told them I was heavily armed, and if they got anywhere closer than they already were, by God, I'm declaring war, and I'm going to do my best to draw first blood. So, hell, let's dance. And I climbed out of my sleeping bag, strapped on my gun belt, grabbed my loaded 12-gauge with double-aught buck and slugs, and climbed out of my tent into the full moonlight, pissed, and I mean pissed off now, and ready for whatever. Well, it was still dead quiet. I remember saying something like, "You wanted me, you got me." I had the 1,000 candle power light on my head and a spotlight on my shotgun and a green laser dot on each pistol. I was prepared with my satellite phone and personal emergency satellite locator device hanging from my neck, standing there in my skivvies with untied boots on, searching my entire perimeter for at least 30 minutes. Then I gave up and went back to my tent and sleeping bag. But the weirdest thing was, the sounds of the forest and even the wind never returned the entire time I was there. Every day and night I could feel them watching me. They probably told me young'uns, they probably told their young'uns that the way I was acting was why they have nothing to do with us. I guess looking back, I acted flat crazy, and we have guns. You think? I'll be damned if they're going to stop me from being in my favorite place, the bush. God bless, Steve. Thanks for letting me rave on. But oh well, they just got my dander up, and I wasn't in the mood, I guess. Doc from Arizona. Okay, Doc, thanks for that, man. Lucky you didn't catch a rock in the forehead. Oh, man, crazy frickin' times out there. Be safe, Doc. Try not to shoot one of those things unless they're actually 100% coming to kill you, all right, or threatening children. I think they're just kind of messing with you, trying to get you to jump out in your underwear and act like a ding-dong and maybe have a laugh, possibly, right? Possibly. What do we got here? Sasquatch encounter. Hi, Steve. You read my last story, so here's some more recent ones. For 2 years in a row, I had contact from a Sasquatch at Parker Dam State Park in Pennsylvania. We had a wood knock and were paced out of the forest by one just inside the tree line. I was also in Lyman Run State Forest when I came face-to-face with a mountain lion, which are not supposed to be in Pennsylvania anymore, so that just goes to show how a lot of things are not supposed to be there, but are. Robert Brown, lifelong outdoorsman, took place 2019. These things are aggressive and potentially dangerous. On Thursday, January 6, 2022, 10:57 a.m. Oh, that's the beginning of the email. Sorry, guys. Robert Brown wrote, "My name is Robert Brown. In 1982, me and a friend and my mother had a terrifying experience. Around 10 p.m., my mother alerted us to what she thought was a woman screaming. We went outside to hear her screaming so loud it was felt as well as heard. This thing was moving up a ridge for about 30 minutes. We tried getting closer for a look. That's when a row of pine trees against the road began violently shaking and bending. We then heard another scream so close my dogs were shaking and their tails were tucked under them. They would not pursue whatever this was. They were apparently scared to death of what was in that pine forest. And just as fast as this began, it ended with a final scream that was answered by another scream from the distance. A friend of mine heard this screaming a mile away from my house and said he had heard this screaming before through the years. I believe it was a mother seeking a lost juvenile. This happened in Zionsville, Pennsylvania." Pennsylvania. Again, it's nonstop in Pennsylvania, isn't it? Just like BC, Texas, Ohio, Florida, Alberta, the Yukon, Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, right? Everywhere. Everywhere. How many people have heard those screams? I wonder if I got time for one more. Here's a short one. All right, I'm going to read this, and I got to get my butt moving, you guys. Questions to ask them. Dear Steve, if someone does have a relationship with BF, can we ask them to ask questions on, and what are your puzzle pieces you lack? Number 1, how long have they existed? How far back is their bloodline? Asau? E-S-A-U? Question mark. Number 2, do they know or remember what happened to humans in the 1800s? Number 3, do they know that a reset is coming to humans and will they be affected too? Number 4, are we going to team up with them and fight against evil, or are we on our own? I'd like to ask them many questions. I think they know more than we do. Our future could depend on our past. Thanks, Scott. P.S. Taking a shot to the head before a shot in the arm. All right, man. I shared it. Let's see what comes, all right? Maybe somebody will have something very informative to share with us. You never know. Good questions. Anyway, what am I going to do? I got to get going. Quick note. There is a man I met years ago in the town I was living in previous to this one. We met once in a mechanic's garage of the Perimeter Meadows. And my 68 Camaro was in his garage. We had a quick little meeting then. And I have since learned that you do follow this channel. I also learned that you were possibly pressured to quit working in the woods wrenching because of run-ins with these damn things, these damn beings, right? And we know mutual people who have had experience with these things. And I don't know what your phone number is, but I don't have a direct link to you. And what I'm trying to do is a quick message to you. I understand you're listening. Is I'm going to go out to the Blackwater and hang with a buddy out there. I made a video around the campfire there last year, I think. And what we were hoping is maybe possibly, because you live not too far from there, is maybe you want to come out with us, have a few beers, and share what you know with us. And that would be really, really cool if you would do that. And if not, that's fine. We don't have to be on video, and maybe we just meet up and have a beer or coffee, and you could share with me what you have seen and heard and witnessed out there, because it would really help a lot of people put some pieces of their puzzle back together, including mine, especially around the home turf there, right? And I had coffee with a friend of yours at McDonald's a few weeks back when I was in town last, and he said he would be mentioning this to you as well. I guess you guys are talking now and then, and I think that would be really good, but I would really like to pursue that and see if we could pull that off. And I'm sure that the people would love to be able to sit back and watch and listen to that conversation on video if we could, possibly, in the near future, in the next few weeks. Anyway, also, if anybody can email me on that note, sharemystory@howtohunt.com or tellmystory@howtohunt.com and get back to me, that would be appreciated. My email's back, finally, and it is stacked with brand new emails. And that's it for now. You guys will be hearing this. The people that are aware that this goes on to a podcast will be hearing this before it goes on to the YouTube next week. But every single recording I do while I'm in jail will be posted on YouTube again, if I am allowed back there. And yes, there is a handful of sniveling little pricks who are in the so-called Sasquatch Bigfoot community who are avidly trying to get me shut down. But they'll never be big enough to. It might be a little bit of a sliver in our backside for a short period of time, but that's about as much as they're ever going to add up to. So, anyway, I'm out of here. Enough babbling. I'll talk to everybody soon.